Liftoff.
And so it's time to call out your name and say you're here. Ann Rarick, here.
Ruth Lauer here.
Paul McCollum here.
Claude Cicchetti here.
Okay.
Paul, did you say? Okay.
Yes, I did.
And are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
For purposes of discussion, may I move to approve the minutes?
Is there a second? Okay.
Okay.
Any more discussion?
Yeah,
I did.
one thing.
Oh, sorry, Claude.
I just want everyone to feel free. You know, I try to keep up, but I could very easily miss something. If you feel there's something that you said or somebody else said, absolutely no problem at all, to add it in there. So.
Well, thank you. That was sort of what I was going to raise as a possible, because one way I should have been doing a job in another way. No, but in section 6, next steps, we have a list of other stakeholders that we could be contacting. And after we had listed it at our previous meeting, I thought I heard, well, maybe we're spreading ourselves too thin and we should not contact those people. So I simply downed tools and didn't contact anybody. I'm willing to go out and do that, but I don't know how other people heard it. Claude thought we were moving forward.
Yeah, I very easily could have missed it. So if somebody else remembers it, I'll put that in there.
Well, I remembered it, but I don't think we came into any conclusions.
Okay, should I, perhaps if somebody could suggest a way to soften it, say, would, potentially talk to something like that?
Yeah.
Okay. The following, okay, I'll do it on the fly.
Either that, Claude, or you could, can you?
Oh, you know what I'll do? This might be what you're suggesting. As it came afterward, after we, listed those, we thought we might be spreading ourselves too thin. So, we were thinking of possibly doing it, but, not necessarily, something like that. Somebody could help me express that better.
How about this? I will make my motion. I move approval of the amended minutes of February 7th, substantially as discussed, which gives Claude some scope.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Sounds good to me. Okay.
Thank you. So one of the things that I've got down here is
wait a minute, I'm sorry, we need a roll call vote. Aye.
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 Thank you.
Okay. So
okay, sorry, Ed.
yeah, it's quite all right. In terms of just updates, I would like anybody who did some interviews to take this opportunity to include us and what you found out.
I can start if you want.
Go ahead.
I met with Alan Cathcart last week for close to 2 hours. Many subjects raised. I think a lot of thought, a lot of thinking and thoughts about things that can be improved, where some of the problems are from his standpoint as being a director in town with employee retention as well as recruitment. And I think I can express that I could go on and on, but I don't think it's necessary. I think once we get to the point where we're seriously getting into the nuts and bolts of the actual bylaw, that's when I can bring up many of these points.
Okay, great, thank you. Rose, did you have your hand up too?
Yeah, I've talked to a retired firefighter for, I don't know, we talked for 20 minutes. We're trying to get together again. Our schedules don't match too well, but he mean, he's lived in Concord for 40 years, and we talked about a bunch of stuff, and he said, please don't quote me. So we'll leave it there at this point. I've still been trying to connect with the police chief and the fire chief, which I will hopefully get done this week.
Great.
What else? That's it, I think.
Okay.
Oh, I got a piece of correspondence marked personal that, so I don't know, I have no idea where it came from, but the suggestion was people would like my phone number to talk to me. And since I don't have any place to send it, they're not getting it, but I'm available. Anyone that wants to talk, it's kind of unusual. I open this personal thing in my mailbox here at work and open up this letter that's unsigned. Kind of amusing.
It was in your email?
No, it's in my, right by the good old post office.
Oh, okay. All right.
So,
Yeah, because we did get one solicitate from the letter that went out in December about the task force with a suggestion, but it was signed email, and it was a good suggestion, actually.
Yeah.
So.
probably learn a lot if people talk to us.
Yep.
And I think you incorporated that, Rand, if I may, into
Yeah.
into
I
the
did.
survey nicely.
Yeah. So are there any other matters that have come up as a result of, okay. Let's get right into the survey. Hopefully you all have had a chance to do it. And there was many steps along the way, and I have to say Aaron and Ruth did a yeoman's job. And I was saying to them off the cuff that I think 40 person hours have gone into this
Oh, at least.
easily.
Yes.
And one of the things we did first was to merge all the questions that you had submitted and then tie them to policies specifically, and then format them in a way that we felt made some natural sense. But you may have other suggestions. So I'm opening the floor at this point.
I got my survey. I took it. I think you guys did a great job.
Excellent.
Yes,
I think you did a fabulous job.
yep. And I know there was a tremendous amount of work put into this by Ann, Ruth, and Aaron. So thank you for the time and the thought and
And you should
taking of
see your
suggestions.
questions in those questions.
Yeah, I think that's what's most important, that every one of us had questions in there. Sometimes they were not untangled, I don't mean that, but there were different threads in the same question that we took apart. But I think we captured everybody's proposed questions. And I think right now what we have to do is feel that the people who are going to take the survey can trust us enough to answer it, knowing that we're not going to know who's answering it.
Right.
It's totally anonymous, and it's a, I don't know, self-selected group. I know that lots of times surveys have a minor yield. You might send it out to 100 people and 10 respond, but we don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
But we're hoping that we can gather some good information to move forward on the bylaws.
My understanding, go ahead, Claude, I'm sorry. Go
Oh,
ahead.
okay, no, not at all. I absolutely appreciate the effort. It's, and I definitely see, lots of questions that we talked about, that are in there. I just wonder a couple of aspects of it. We had spoken previously about not allowing open response because of the potential legal and other issues regarding that. And as well, the anonymity of it, I'm not sure the benefit of doing that, versus actually, the getting somebody to respond. I guess the other caution I would have is, I think it's probably good policy-wise for us to run this by either the select board or by our two observers for them to perhaps think about the survey, and if needed, if they wish to get advice from town council or the town manager or the HR director, if any of the questions pose any issues. I mean, to me, there are actually a couple questions that I think do potentially pose issues. So I think it would be, prudent for us to give the, again, some members of the select board or the entire select board a chance to take a look at it.
What are the specific questions that you think raise issues or risk or whatever?
Sure. Well, one of them is the idea of having an employee serve on the personnel board. My understanding is that's not the way it works in Concord for a number of reasons by policy. For example, there are not teachers that serve on the school committee. There aren't employees sitting on others. And you could make just as good an argument for saying that teachers should sit on the school committee. The other issues are, especially for an anonymous survey, to ask kind of a laundry list of things. Would you like this? I mean, I think we should already assume we'll get 100% of people saying, yeah, those all sound great. And then another issue with somebody serving on a personnel board, it would seem to be, and again, this would be something town council would be able to figure out. It seems to be against the conflict of interest law, where you're not supposed to be able to do something that could actually affect your job and your compensation and so on. So, for lots of reasons, I think there are issues there.
May I? I can't deny that you have valid concerns, but I'm just wondering, since the survey is gathering opinions and not trying to reset the charter, that we can't just put somebody on the personnel board unless we change the rules. Are we not just asking for an opinion, not setting somebody up either to feel that they failed because we haven't changed? It seems to me our only job is to gather information, and the selectmen will take our recommendations and do or not do. And I don't know, for instance, on the open-ended part, I completed a survey just this week that was on Facebook of all things, from the town of Concord about road surfaces in Concord Center. It was open-ended questions. And does that have to go to town council? I don't know. Again, I'm not sure that I'm capable of responding. I don't know the answer, but I do know that when Kerry was talking to us, she was saying that she had more flexibility than we did. As we're a town committee, everything has to be under open meeting law. And so what's the status of something if somebody answers an open-ended question and we discuss it during a meeting, or the survey responses? What if the open-ended question involves somebody talking about a boss that they have and they mention them by name and they say something about it and it's defamatory? Does that become part of our minutes and open meeting law? Can people ask for that? What's the repercussions of it? I remember specifically hearing, Mary Accardi say that, we should stay away from open-ended questions. And I thought we had a consensus that we're going to do multiple choice questions as a result. And we mentioned that a number of times. And I think the sort of problem with what you suggest about potentially saying something that will require a change in the charter, I think we're potentially raising the expectations of the town's employees. And if we're saying, would you like this? Would you like this? And oh, by the way, you can't have it. We might actually hurt morale rather than help morale. And that's why I think the town manager and the HR director should have a chance to give their opinions to the select board on this, because, or to us, if we want to talk to them, because, we may, giving a laundry list of things for people to have and then saying, oh, well, you can only have one of them. Have we helped or have we hurt?
I don't think we're going to do any damage personally.
Paul?
No, I concur with Ruth. We're making a suggestion to the board of select, to the select board, and they can choose not to do it.
Right.
And with respect to employee on the personnel board. It's a question asking if they want to have, if they thought that would be okay. As far as the legality, I guess, of a lot of the towns that I looked at, Littleton, Westwood, I have a slew of them that have employees on the personnel board. I guess they're all just hanging out there liability wise, but they seem to pull it off okay.
Well,
And that's a decision for, all this is a question.
Right.
And our recommendation will be voted on, that goes before the board to the select board, and then they decide.
Okay, if I could put it in terms of a motion, and whether or not it gets a second, I'd like to move that we put the draft survey before the two observers from the select board for them to seek advice if they wish to do so.
Okay, anybody want to second that?
Oh, rats. I always second so that we can get discussion. So I second the proposal so that it can be discussed. I don't, in this case, Claude, I think it's the wrong thing to do to submit this to two observers because they are not the board. If you want the Board of Selectmen's opinion, you have to ask the board, which means bringing it before a meeting and voting and so forth.
Okay, I'll accept that as a friendly
Or-
amendment.
Yeah, I was
Yep,
gonna
go
say,
ahead.
Claude.
Yep.
Would you be willing to let us pass it by the town manager?
Look, we're a strong town manager town. I think that's perfectly fine. Absolutely, makes sense.
Yeah, I
Sure.
mean, she's the one that freed up Aaron to work on
Yep.
this in the first place, so
Absolutely.
let's
Absolutely.
would you be willing to amend it then?
I absolutely. Yep. Or I mean, yeah, perfect. So
So how many are willing to have us move forward with sharing this with the town manager and getting her feedback? Only two. How many are opposed? No,
Two.
people. I didn't see two people.
You
Your
should
hand
be
up?
me, Bruce. Who
Okay.
hasn't voted? Paul hasn't voted, so he's,
I'm lost where we are. Are we still in discussion, or are we taking we're
I
voting?
was asking whether or not people were interested, willing to have the town manager look at it.
With what if the town manager says scratch 10 questions?
We'll go back and rewrite it.
no,
No,
Well, I don't think so.
That's exactly my point. I think we've written it, and unless there's some, I don't see any legal ramifications here whatsoever. And I think we should just put it forward. This is our survey. Move on. I mean, we get
Okay.
surveys all the time from the town. I don't think they go before the Board of Selectmen, the town manager. I think we're a competent, intelligent group of people, and just ask the questions and we'll come up with.
All right, we have 2 to 3, so it passes.
no,
I mean, it
It's
does
fair.
not pass, and
I'm not-
so we'll just go ahead with our plans for sending it out to employees this coming Friday.
Do
what
we,
So-
date is that?
do we need a
Huh?
motion?
4? We're going out 4?
I'm sorry?
Wait,
We're mailing it on March 4, is that it?
Yeah, that's what we had
Okay,
targeted.
sorry, okay, and what's your anticipated cutoff date?
Well, we saying March 14th at noon.
3/14. Thank you. I just needed to say it for my notes.
so sorry, March 3, you said?
March 14th is when the cutoff is.
Okay, but it gets sent out March 3rd?
It's
Fourth.
going
March
out
4th.
March 4th.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Thanks.
Think about marching forward.
Ho, 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 ho. Okay,
And so, Erin, do you want to chime in about how we did?
Of course. I was very impressed. All 5 of you did it very successfully. And, I appreciate it because it was a good test for me to see what happens on the other side. And it was a good test to see what sort of functionality does SurveyMonkey offer as far as analysis. So, it was also a good test to be sure if in fact the board does vote to have it anonymous, that it is in fact anonymous. I was not able to see who responded in any sort of way. I could verify whether or not who the invitations went to, which was good. I had no way to know who was responding though. And I will say that SurveyMonkey offers so many things, so many built-in features as far as you could break down the analysis in many different ways. You could look at particular questions, particular groupings of questions. I don't know, I was impressed by it. And I thank you all for being so quick and just responding right away. So I was able to see that it worked.
Now, did you do any graphing of our responses?
I
Or-
didn't,
Okay.
because the graphing was built in, but a lot of us, I did participate, so it was sent to the 5 of you and me.
Did
And
you
that was a way.
recognize your own responses?
I did. I wasn't as creative as some of you, so I was disappointed in myself. But we were all full-time, I think. We all worked there more than 10 years. So the results, and, we all sort of said some of the things that would be interesting or, motivated for us, and different, I can't remember the context of the question, but the good thing was every single thing was picked by 1 or 2 people. I didn't see the same thing chosen all along. I didn't see anybody just, go to town on
yes.
anything. It was meaningful. It was meaningful in that you're mystical employees. So anyway, but I'd be happy to provide you any analysis if you would like, or just to get an idea of what the graphs are, or what sort of, for the committee to take a look at what's possible. I'm happy to do that for you.
I have a question for you, Erin.
Yes.
When you are busy working with SurveyMonkey, do you have any notion of their turnaround time if we cut off on the 14th at noon? When can you begin to receive their analysis?
Oh, it's ready. It's ready at 12:01. We were
really?
able. Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the beauty of automated platform requests, questionnaires, yeah.
Well, I don't know. I would have been more comfortable if it was like 12:05 or something. I want to know that every last one who submitted is actually represented.
Mhm. Yes, I suppose that's a good point. And I'm going to look into that a little bit further to ensure that is in fact, that if at 12 o'clock the survey closes, that, there isn't a sort of a wait period, or I will check that to be sure.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So go ahead, Paul.
I just want to go on the record, Erin, that I was the one that asked for free lunch.
I wondered. I wondered.
As a suggestion, but I don't know how far that'll go. We'll see.
We'll see.
So the expectation is that we'll have maybe a couple of graphs and just an update from Erin at the next meeting, because it'll be a couple of hours after the closing of the questionnaires, and we'll be able to find out how many people actually took the survey, which if we get 20 to 30%, I will think that is
Oh,
superb.
that would be wonderful.
Yeah. So, I mean, that would be, and anything above that is gravy. And
I
then,
was thinking anything above 10% was gravy.
yeah, well,
Just, having done a few surveys, but this is good.
so we'll get some rough data at our next meeting, and then we'll have some charts that will be able to be available to us as we deliberate our recommendations during the month of April.
Great.
Any other questions of either Aaron or the group?
Just a thank you. That's all.
Yep.
Good work, guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent.
So, okay, Claude,
Yes. 1 sec, I have to get the next piece of paper here. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, this won't be long. Let me just share a screen and bring up something. Okay, can everyone see that?
yeah,
Yes.
Okay, great. So all I wanted to point out is one way we could frame how we're looking at things is each of these are very specific sections of the personnel bylaw. The perhaps most important one is section 3, where it says the personnel board and town manager shall adopt and maintain personnel policies and procedures as needed to interpret the provisions of the bylaw. And then what the bylaw does, which is, you know, somewhat consistent and somewhat inconsistent, is that it then starts to specify, you know, in some cases in a very detailed way, some of these policies and procedures. And the decision that we as a task force have to make is where should the decisions be made about some very specific things. And I'll just pick, you know, something randomly, you know, like vacation leave or holidays. If it's the case that, you know, I would say generally what seems to be happening with personnel policies is, you know, I'm just going to guess that they're probably getting a little bit more generous, especially as it gets more and more difficult to hire people. So that means that in order to hire well and retain well, we sometimes need to adjust the policies and procedures. If that decision is made by the personnel board and town manager, you know, that's something that could be done quickly. But if that decision is specified, affects something that's specified in the bylaw, then that decision has to wait until town meeting. So for example, you know, here we are in February. If, you know, the town manager feels that it would be helpful to add another holiday or do something like that, we actually wouldn't be able to implement it until, you know, April 2023 at next year's town meeting, because we've missed the warrant for this year's town meeting. And, you know, my guess is that the town manager would prefer to have the flexibility, you know, and I think some of the times it might be not just to increase it, but to match what people are getting that are under collective bargaining agreement. So if collective bargaining agreement changes and gets something additional, again, you have to wait until the next town meeting to get it for all other employees. So in a way, by specifying things, we're actually putting town employees in a disadvantaged position. So one way we could help fix that is to take things that we think are incredibly important, but also fairly immutable, things that aren't going to change over time. You know, and I'll give an example. One thing that was suggested that's not in the bylaw and is probably not in policies and procedures is to have an employee handbook. If we think it's important enough for there to be an employee handbook that we think there should be a section in the bylaw, that sounds like a pretty good idea. And it would then take a change of town meeting vote to say that we shouldn't have an employee bylaw. So, you know, on the other hand, if it's something specific about sick leave or holidays or vacation leave, I would think we'd want to be as general as possible and leave the details to the personnel board and town manager in their policies and procedures manual. So as we go forward, again, that's kind of all I wanted to say. And I've highlighted in blue the things that are actually going before this year's town meeting. You know, sections 5 and 6 go every year. And then this year, sections 12, 13, and 14, you know, going to town meeting again, you know, probably to do catch up. So.
Question, please.
yes, go ahead.
Where you mentioned the employee handbook should it come to pass.
Yeah.
What about the ombuds? where would that fit? And would it be town meeting or town manager?
Sure. So, yeah, great question. So the idea of having an employee ombuds would probably be a new section. And just like everything else we're recommending, it would have to go to the select board and then to town meeting in order for there to actually be an ombuds. And the creation of the ombuds would be by the bylaw. So the bylaw would basically say you have to have one. Then what the ombuds does is, you know, that's different. Yeah.
So it would become a new section.
A new
Section 21.
probably a new section. And, you know, again, we're not held to these numbers. You know, it's very subjective whether all the leaves, each of the different types of leave has its own section, or we group them all together. You know, we could perhaps take this as an opportunity to, you know, perhaps organize it in a way that we think makes more sense.
I don't want to just hog everybody's time, but I have a basic question on the bylaw, the 1985, and the third one that I can't remember. How do we know which parts of those are extant, which ones are working, and which ones are no longer actually something that the person, even though it says it's there, the personnel board doesn't actually do it anymore? How can we find that out?
We could ask the personnel board, but my guess is we've always been held, the personnel board has always been held very strictly to the personnel bylaw. The charge is quite frankly a different story. The charge has not been updated since 1985. And there are a number of things written that I certainly know from, you know, my years on the personnel board were not done. I'm not even sure I was aware that there was such a thing as a charge. When I came onto the personnel board, my training involved the bylaw and you know, looking at other town documents, but certainly not the charge. So the charge was never anything that I was even familiar with.
So that makes me more confused than ever, because you weren't aware that 85 existed, but it's never been rescinded, if that's the right word. But both you and several other people who have been either former members of the personnel board or current members of the personnel board have said, oh, vis-a-vis that, we don't do that anymore. And I don't know how many of those that's are an issue for us. I don't want to put a lot of effort into finding out how we should be doing it if we're not doing it anymore.
Right. I would suggest that because the personnel board has always focused on the personnel bylaw, and you know, the charge is something that the select board put forward in 1985, and select board, it's fine, didn't update it. I think it would be perfectly appropriate for us to focus on the personnel bylaw, and then depending on how the personnel bylaw goes, the select board could then rewrite the charge. So I think we should set the 1985 charge aside and focus on the personnel bylaw, make our suggestions on the bylaw, and then select board can rewrite the charge as they want.
So grievance is not in the bylaw?
Grievance is in town policy. So the official grievance procedures is in town policy.
So if it came all the way down to next town meeting, one of our recommendations to the selectmen may or may not be that 1985 should be refreshed or amended or rescinded.
Yeah, I think
not the guts of it, but the
absolutely.
The
and I think they're aware of that. I think they're aware of that. That needs to be the charge needs to be updated, amended, rescinded, as you say. Probably,
Paul and then
yeah.
Bruce?
Question, by the 1985, do you mean the administrative code or the personnel board?
The one that Anita wrote.
She didn't sign it.
I'm looking for it. I'm looking. I'm sorry.
I think this is it.
I've got it. I've got it.
Okay, I just want to make sure I know what we're talking about.
Paul, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I just want to, I basically reiterating what I said during the last meeting is I think we're putting the cart before the horse. I would like to, when we get to the point of we are looking at this, our homework is to take, conceivably the first 2 pages of the personnel bylaw and drill down on them. I know under the classification and reclassification, I likely will take up half an hour making a presentation that I've already been working on based on issues that have been pointed out to me by employees. So that I think there's a lot of thought that needs to be
That's
put.
section
needs-
4, section 4, employee status.
Yes, 10.4. When we get to that point of drilling down, I mean, I think we're waxing the car before it's been done, before it's been built.
Before it's been painted.
Yeah, once we get employee input, wrap up, I can collect my thoughts with some of the issues that I discussed with Alan Cathcart. We can look at reclassification, possibly some that have been done in the past that shall I go so far as to say skirted the bylaw. And it's at least one meeting just on that one section. So I think, I just from my standpoint, I think we're jumping ahead of we're putting the cart before the horse. And the only thing I would say is to close to that is as far as the policies are concerned, I think that's what jammed us up for the first 3 weeks when we started the committee was you're not supposed to write the policies. I have no intention of suggesting to the town how many holidays we should have, how many in rewriting, what they, clear management rights that they have. The one point I would like to make is under section 3, employees shall be provided an opportunity to review and comment on any proposed personnel policy that would have a significant impact on the conditions of their employment. So I think there's a lot of pieces to this as we start to get into it, and the employees should have a chance to respond if something is significant. Maybe it won't be, but I just want to point that out. That's all I have to say.
So, Paul, if we are commenting in a lead up to making a recommendation, we would welcome any employee attending the meeting and commenting. Is that what you're saying? Or
Yeah, it's
we're open to written and oral correspondence or anything
I
like
think
that?
I think that's a good idea, Ruth. My expectations are that we do something. It says in there, this is a line in the personnel, in the personnel by or in the policies, and an email being sent out saying, on this date, the task force will be discussing X, Y, and Z. You might be interested in it, and we'd be interested in hearing your comments. I just want to leave that. I don't want to just leave that out of the mix. That's all. And if we could, just a suggestion for the meetings in the future is when we get to that point where we're drilling down on individual sections in the personnel bylaw, we have some notice and we can each, address what our thoughts are so that we can get them all together, not just we're jumping all over the place. That's all.
Okay. So we've come to what I fondly call the book club portion of the text. We each are going to be responsible for doing what Claude is is doing. We're supposed to be drilling down, learning what we can learn about each of the options that is in the personnel board purview. And my first step was, I need to know what they're already doing and what they're no longer doing. Claude suggests we ask the personnel board, or you had a second one.
Well, again, the personnel board, their principal job is to administer the personnel bylaw. So if you want to ask the personnel board if there's anything beyond the bylaw, if you want to ask them specifically about the 1985 charge, that's certainly, reasonable. But for our movement going forward, I think focusing on the bylaw itself, which is our main charge, is probably going to be the most fruitful. And in terms of kind of scheduling it, I mean, talking about this today, the idea of it is, as we're looking and interpreting things that we, number one, decide to ask in a survey, or number two, interpret after the survey, we have in the back of our minds the structure of the bylaw and how it would fit in. I don't think we should be looking at the bylaw for the first time after we do everything. So I just,
You're right.
Again, suggest
Nobody has.
all right, we suggest we do it in parallel. So
I assure you, Claude, that I have studied it for hours on end for 30 years that I worked for the town, and I have refreshed my memory with it since. So, yeah, no, I'm not suggesting I haven't looked. I have looked very carefully.
Yeah.
The other thing that I've done is to review the 2 documents that Mary sent us from the town of Leominster and Lancaster, or Lancaster and Leominster.
Ludlow.
Ludlow, sorry. I knew there were L's, but I wasn't sure. And one of the things that I reached out to her to ask her about is that they make recommendations about what has to be in their personnel bylaw. And they refer to certain things being moved from bylaws to policies. So I wrote to her and I asked her, I said, is there a benchmark or a study that's been done around best practices around this? And there hasn't. And I was very surprised, because they're slightly different for each town. Obviously, it has to be, but it's a concept in terms of changing a bylaw to a policy so that it can be more agile, as you said, Claude. So those are some of the things that I've been looking at.
So policies need not go to town meeting, is that what you're saying?
Say that again?
Policies need not go to town meeting?
Correct.
They're in the hands of the committee that's administering them.
Yep.
Ooh,
the specific way the bylaw anticipates that is it says the town manager and the personnel board will administer, decide policies and procedures as interpretations of the personnel bylaw. And then the bylaw also anticipates that if there's a disagreement between the personnel board and the town manager as to interpretation of the bylaw, the personnel board is the deciding vote.
And I don't think in my 30 years plus retired years, I don't recall it ever been that issue ever really coming up. I think they all do work fairly well together and in concert. It's almost a non-issue to me. I think everybody understands management rights versus what's in the personnel bylaw. I don't think it's ever been an issue.
One of the things that I'm kind of curious about is who's allowed to ask for a special town meeting?
Ed Perry could tell you.
hello. There's
Ed?
this.
Citizens are allowed to ask for a special town meeting, and I believe it may take 100 signatures of citizens, and you can get a special town meeting. You can also do a special town meeting within a town meeting. So to the extent that the town manager wanted to renew the bylaws now, you could do a special town meeting within the town meeting that's already scheduled.
Great, thank you.
I will check on my numbers while you're talking here. I
Okay,
also
good.
have a point later on, but
Okay,
I'll do that under public comments. Thanks.
thank you. Great. Anita,
It's 200 citizens, Ned, to
Okay.
call a meeting
I stand
to put-
corrected.
and then to put an article on the warrant for a special time meeting takes 100 signatures.
okay,
I stand corrected. Thank you, Anita.
And then the select board has a limited number of days to call the meeting, for the meeting to be scheduled. So the timing, whoever's going to submit the petition, we always urge them, don't have, I think it was a 45-day window, the meeting has to be held. So you don't want to do it so the meeting is held in Christmas Day or something. So, but it takes 200 signatures.
okay, thank you. Ruth,
May I have a question for Ned, please?
sure.
Are we, by tradition or charter or anything like that, limited in what kind of matters can be considered at special town meeting versus annual town meeting? So it's town meeting.
Town meeting.
Thank you.
And I'll be corrected by Anita at any time. But I think she's agreeing with me on that one.
Yeah.
There is a reason she was at my right elbow most of the meeting.
Okay, we're kind of sliding into public comments. Let me open up the floor for public comments.
Well, my Ned
Go
Perry,
ahead, Ned.
362 Bedford Street. Part of the reason we moved this, or I got involved with moving the article and then the agreement with the select board forward, grew out of my participation in the Town Governance Study Committee back in 2014, which recommended that the charge of each board and committee be reviewed on a regular basis.
Mm,
And I became aware that the 1985 charge had not been updated for the personnel board. So in my mind, the personnel board is still governed by that charge in 1985. I realize that there are people on this session who haven't been aware of it. But as town moderator, I was very much aware of the personnel committee and made sure that every several years that the articles 4 and 5 were, or 5 and 6, whatever, were put before town meeting. So the town meeting knew that classification compensation plans were their prerogative. And I also became aware that the charge from 1985 wasn't in fact being followed. And that is it's still in effect. I'm sorry to disagree with those people who say you can disregard it. It is still in effect. For the provisions that are not being followed, there are people who should be called on account for them not being followed.
Yeah.
And that's just my public citizens comment. But the charge needs to be updated and the select board needs to do it. And my belief that the study committee hopefully will make some recommendations to the select board on updating the 1985 charge. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Just thank you for that, Ned. Good point.
Yeah.
I happen to agree with you 100%. So
Yeah, I'll just comment on the comment to try to give a perspective as a former personnel board member. There are a number of things anticipated in the charge that the personnel board would need a staff to accomplish. They would effectively have to duplicate the staff of what the town manager has and the human resources has. So I think that's part of the reason why, if we're deciding now that we should follow that charge, it isn't necessarily realistic to do that. You know, the personnel board would need a budget and so on. So my suggestion again is that we focus on where we think the personnel bylaw should be. And once we come to that, the charge should definitely be rewritten. Should the charge be rescinded now? Probably. You know, does it, because I don't think it's applicable in the world that we have now.
Any other comments? Go, Bruce.
I would agree with Ned Perry. It should be followed, period, end of discussion. You know, you can't just change it because you aren't following it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Carlin, do you see?
Thanks. Carlin, 83 Wits End, slightly different topic. I would suggest that you put in your recommendations that the personnel board put in some type of estimate of the financial consequences of their personnel board recommendations. I was just observing the FinCom meeting that it was held very recently. I think it must have been last week. And they completely glossed over the financial implications of the personnel board actions, saying that's not within their purview.
Really?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. Take a look at the video. So I would recommend that you put in your recommendations that if the personnel board is going to make a recommendation to town meeting, that they try and make some type of financial estimate of the expense. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Am I misreading or misremembering past practice of somebody from the finance committee being at the personnel board meetings?
Oh,
Claude?
in the old days, that was true.
Yeah,
I don't know about current.
yeah. It is not. I mean, nobody from the finance committee comes, at least to the ones, yeah, Paul.
Just as a point of reference, there are many towns that have, as part of their personnel board, one of the members is a member of the FinCom.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's appropriate or applicable here, but I thought that was an interesting way of doing it,
Yeah,
where it sort of all encompassing.
yeah. Anita,
I observed or was the recording secretary for the FinCom for 5 years up until last spring. And they did have some FinCom liaison. But frankly, the personnel board was meeting so infrequently. You know, some years, once or twice a year, that they were really just meeting prior to town meeting. That with so many additional committees to observe, they did drop it from the active list. And the observer sometimes would just look at the minutes and look at the agendas, but it was really because there wasn't much to observe in reality.
yeah. All right, thank
Interesting.
you. All right, our next meeting is scheduled for March 14th. And we only have one meeting beyond that that's been scheduled so far. I have a question for you all. What do you think about meeting in person? Since some of you I have not met in person.
Great idea.
So we'll, can we continue to do the Monday at 4 every other week? And we'll schedule the next two after the 28th for in person.
May
Bruce?
I have a minute to check in with the townhouse on that? Because it would end up being a hybrid meeting.
That's fine.
And I'm fine with that as well, but there are only certain rooms, and so we would need to make a reservation. May I get
Well,
back to the
Yeah.
committee on that?
Yep. Good.
Should I do, what do
Aaron?
we have March already, April and May?
Yep. Aaron, did you have your hand up? Wait a minute, you're on mute. Okay.
Thank you, Ann. I just wanted to offer my services. I'm still trying to navigate the liaison role, but I am happy to help you if you need me to talk to the
Great.
townhouse on anything.
Ruth,
Excellent, excellent.
Okay.
Ruth is going to delegate that to you.
Yes, watch me delegate. That would be excellent. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much, Erin.
You're welcome.
Yes, Bruce.
I may or may not have a problem with the 14th. I have a family member that's not going to be around too long, and that may be a day that I can't be here, but I don't know yet.
We will miss you and we understand.
Okay.
But I think we're trying to wrap this up by the end of May. So we're going to.
That continues to be my goal, but I wouldn't be disappointed if we had to slip.
Yeah.
Right.
Just one quick question I had on that. We have a whole nother year. This is, it seems, I know we don't want to. I'm not suggesting we need to, but our committee charge goes not to this, it's a year from now. So
No,
I just was curious as to why we're rushing.
Because I was told 6 months.
Yeah. But it's in the charge that it's for the following town. I'm
Well,
not suggesting.
Yeah, your point is well taken. And what the idea was to get the recommendation to the selectmen, with the idea being it would give plenty of time for any kind of public hearings and any kind of redrafting of the original. I mean, and the personnel board could get to working on what the changes were going to be.
Yeah. I mean, I just see this fall as being a more realistic in terms of people. Yeah, because I think I like it when all 5 people are here that have a. I think everybody in this committee is very invested in what we're doing, very committed, is putting in a tremendous amount of time, a lot of time.
So are you saying that you want to?
I'd like to see all 5 people, if we can, present. You know, if Claude couldn't make it Valentine's Day, understandably, and if Bruce can't make it this next meeting, I don't think there's any problem with kicking the can down the road a little. I mean, I think we're moving right along at a rapid pace, but we can take our time a little bit. Just me.
How does everybody else feel about it?
I'm happy to take our time because I think it's going to take a lot of study to get through the various narratives. But I like the idea of a goal because without the goal, I would just be sitting here in a puddle studying. You know, I'm the one who gets lost in the Encyclopedia Britannica, and I'm lost when I go. I just have too much fun. So I need a goal. And
October 31st, Halloween. How about that?
1 year to date.
How about the 30th? I want to go trick or treating.
Ah, yes.
Motion amended.
Second. Please don't
Okay.
put that in the minutes.
So what are you saying? Are you saying you would rather not do March 14th?
I think if we can, it would be nice to have all 5 people present.
Okay. So that would delay March 14th. It would be March 28th. And then into April and May.
If people feel differently, I'm just one.
I'm not wedded to specific dates in terms of benchmarks, but at the same time are milestones. But at the same time, I would like to see this come to some fruition at a point that's reasonable. So we will strike the 14th and do March 28th. And we'll plan 2 meetings for April.
Knowing that we might have to move them around, given the holy days of Patriots' Day and whatnot. April is touchy.
It's
But
spring.
Erin will do her thing. Oh. I had another Erin thought. It'll come to me.
Okay. So what's next steps if for everybody is to,
I know,
have
I
an alre-
know.
what,
I have a thought. Could we please impose on Erin to work with either Carlin Reed or the town manager's office to get our task force meetings posted to MMN, so that they are readily available to people. I looked for our last meeting and it's not posted yet. So that's, and that's probably reasonable because of how many committees that we have, but we're pressed for time and I don't want people to lose their opportunities. Oh, there she is. Carlin heard me. If you could do it.
I'll press that message along to the production manager
thank you.
to try and encourage that because of the relevance and timing of your meetings. Thank you for that heads up, Ruth.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you both for taking that off my to-do.
And Erin, maybe when we get the April dates, we'll make sure that they go out because I don't want to wait till March 28th to tell people what the dates are in April.
Very good. Okay. And I will be checking to be sure we have hybrid capability in our locations
Yeah.
for, okay,
Yeah.
very good. Thank you.
Excellent.
Okay, any parting comments from people?
This is Walden Pond in 1957.
I
So
was
what-
going to guess. I wondered if it was White Pond. It's Walden, huh?
It's Walden, that's 1957, and I think the first year I had swimming lessons there was 61.
Okay.
So that's the area, there's the bathhouse, and the docks that were there. That's this week's picture. So
All right.
And who
So do
donated,
I
who
hear a
donated the
motion
30
to-
acres on the south side of Walden Pond to make it a state reservation?
oh boy, you got me there, Ned. What do
The
we have?
Emerson family.
Oh,
They've been
really?
so generous to the town. Yep. Donated it to the state.
Didn't they
That
donate
is
that
awesome.
little plot of land in the center there, Emerson Playground as well?
They
That
They
little
did
one?
that. They did that. They did Emerson Hospital. They did the Concord Museum right across from the Emerson House. They've done a lot for the town.
Yes.
Yeah.
Too true. Yes.
Understatement.
Okay, I do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Adjourn.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Okay, see you on the 28th.
Thank you.
No, yes, yes.
No, thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Oof.